Hello again, everyone. We're down in the shop today, and we're going to be taking apart a Ford 9-inch rear end. So let's get started. I don't know the gear ratio or the year or anything on this 9-inch. There's the reason why. There's no tag on it. So the only way to be sure is take it apart, see what we have. I did notice one thing that kind of gives me a clue as to what this rear end came out of. The spring perches. That's a really large hole there in that spring perch. I think they made a Galaxy, if I'm not mistaken. It had a rubber mount here on the spring perch before the shock plate went on. That's just a guess, but it doesn't really matter. In measuring this rear end from hub to hub, which is from here to the opposite side, it measures 59 1/4. And even with no tag, how do we tell it's a Ford 9-inch? These two nuts, you can't get to them because the front of the housing is in the way. You have to use a wrench to take these off. So that tells us for sure that it is a 9-inch. Alright, I'm going to start taking this apart. We'll go through that step by step, and I'll show you how to disassemble it. First thing we'll do is take these bearing retainers and the backing plate off, and then we'll try to get the axles out. Okay, all four of these off on this side. And here's a look at the bolt, which it has a rectangular head that holds itself as you tighten it or loosen it. That's a 3/8 bolt, 9/16 head on the nut. Fine thread. So let's get the other side off. With the backing plate and the retainer loose, there's a couple of ways you can get this axle out. I'm going to try this first, just tapping on the edge of it. Not real hard, just enough to see if it's loose at all. Or I've seen fellas put a chain around the back side and jerk on the chain back and forth, and that'll loosen it. We're going to try this hammer first and see what happens. Well, that's working. You can see, I think you can see down in there, yeah. See, we're probably halfway out already. So I'm going to continue with this side and we'll see if we can get it out. Well, that worked. Now, I don't recommend using a big hammer and hitting this hard, but I just tapped around the perimeter and just kept going slow and tapping, and it came right out. So let's get the other side out. And the other side came out pretty easy. Okay, next we're going to take what I call the center chunk out, this part. Bolts to the housing here with these nuts. Even though you can't get into these two bottom ones with a socket, you can use a ratchet wrench. Now, as you start to take this out, the wrench will kind of jam against the housing. As long as you keep the wrench at the bottom of the housing, you see we can't get that out now. But if you keep the wrench at the bottom, you can loosen the nut enough to where it'll come off, and then the wrench will come off. One thing I forgot to mention before I started disassembling this, I did drain what oil was in it out. Wasn't much in there, but I did that first. And now that we got those two lower nuts off, we can use a ratchet driver to take the rest of them off. And that's all of the nuts. Of course, you want to save all of our hardware. Okay, let's see if we can get this center chunk off. Hopefully I can just pull this straight up and it'll come off. Okay, got her up where I can get to it easy. I'm going to spray these with some penetrating oil. Let them soak. I need to get this U-bolt off. Let me work on that next. Get that, what's left of that universal joint out of the way. Have the rest of that U-bolt out. Now we're going to remove the nut that holds the yoke on, and it's 1 1/16 inches. Now we're going to take these retainers off on each side that holds the ring gear in, and you notice I've put 2 punch marks. That way I know that this retainer goes on this side and this retainer will go over on this side. And these are 3/4. So again, we'll use the impact. It should come right out. And I'll take plenty of reference photos as I'm taking this apart. In case I forget something, I can always go back and look at the photos. And I'll have the video too. And we'll have to remove this adjuster ring. That adjusts your ring gear right to left. And we got a bearing retainer. And now we need to get that yoke off the front of the pinion so we can pull the pinion gear out. It's on there pretty good, but I'm tightening the 2 nuts about a turn, and then just taking a hammer and tapping on the end of the bolt, and they're loosening up every time, so I think if we keep doing that, it'll pop off. Well, it's working. You can see we've moved it quite a bit, and I'm about out of a little bit more of adjustment there, but alright, we got the pinion yokes off, and I wanted to show you this is my homemade puller. Pretty simple. Just a round, just a plate. I drilled holes on each side. Bolts, one here and one on the opposite corner. And this bolt goes against the pinion. The head of this bolt goes against the end of the pinion shaft. See, it's smaller. And then we put a washer on that. It sets up against the plate. and it's even adjustable. You run out of threads on the 1/4-inch bolts, you can adjust this up to give you more pull. Next we'll take the cover off, this cover here, while you're taking 2 of the bolts out. Get those other out. Should pull apart. And here's the front cover after I prized off. You see the outer bearing and the outer seal. And there's the inner bearing on top of the pinion shaft. And there's a rear bearing that's in the housing of the center chunk. Here's the front yoke. Someone has tried to pull this off before and they bent the flange that goes around the yoke. Probably prized on it, didn't use a proper puller. And it's even separated a little right there where it meets the case. We'll try to straighten that out. Now that we have the pinion and the ring gear out, set over here on the table. This is my starting point. I put some white paint here. There's 44 teeth on the ring gear. And there's 16 teeth on the pinion. So if we multiply that out, that's 2.75. Well, we have everything taken apart. I had to do a little research as far as the sizes of the bearings and the seals and all that important information. But I've measured everything I can think of and have it written down, so when we order some parts for this, we'll make sure we have the right parts. Got it in a safe place and got it all together. That's all the parts that it started with. They're still all there, so we haven't lost anything yet. So we'll get back on this once we determine the parts we need, and we'll see you then. Well, we hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, how about giving us a like and subscribing to our channel? Thanks.